Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever you happen to be listening to this, everybody. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down the nitty-gritty RB tiers, getting you guys one step closer to hopefully drafting the perfect fantasy football team this lovely August. Of course, I cannot accomplish this alone, however, and accordingly, I'm joined by Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland's in the house. What's up, Dwain?
What's up, Ian? Just hoping my computer holds on. I don't know what's gotten into it. A gremlin, apparently. You know, if you hear of what a gremlin is, whatever that is, it's in my computer right now. So, yeah, computer just kind of freaking out. But I'm doing good, man. Talking ball with Mr. Hartitz, that's always a good time.
I blame AI for every bad thing that happens in my life and also yours, Dwain. So you can just, rest on that. Eventful day in the NFL world, not slowing down because of Dwain's computer problems, though. We obviously had the Browns sign former Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley. Huge news there. Also did announce Shedeur Sanders as their preseason starter. Surely the mainstream media will make a massive deal out of that. Also had the Colts determine that they will be starting Anthony Richardson preseason game 1, Daniel Jones game 2. Dwain, the biggest news, though, was the fact that Jordan Addison was officially suspended 3 games for his role in that DUI. So expected. I think we already kind of had our ranks with Jordan Addison. Are you changing much there?
No, I mean, we were looking at 2 to 3 games based off of everything that Drew Davenport had been saying. So I think if you had been following Drew, like, you knew where the sweet spot was for this thing. So, yep, that's basically where I've had him. Talented player, Ian. You and I, he's one of these guys that we like to watch Jordan Addison. We see him attack all layers of the field, so he can definitely unlock some upside. The big challenge is he's got this guy, Justin Jefferson, across from him, and now probably a healthier TJ Hawkinson. So even if we thought he was going to play all 3 of those games, I don't know how much more I would even move him up my ranks then. Probably like 3 or 4 spots, honestly, in the receiver rank. So some things to like about him, but this doesn't really move him much. We were already accounting for it.
Obviously not ideal is going to be missing these games, but if you are going to miss some games, let it be before bye weeks happen. The worst thing that could happen is obviously that Ezekiel Elliott 2019 or whatever it was scenario where we actually have to deal with that mid-season, aka please NFL figure out what you're going to do at Rashee Rice very soon so we can go ahead and adjust the ranks on that one. But guys, again, talking all things running backs on today's show. So accordingly, let's get into our DraftKings opening lines. Dwain, plenty of tier talk and rankings ahead. But first, I wanted to stop and just ask, who is one player we have gone back and forth on our personal ranks this offseason, whether it's much lower or higher? Again, maybe just that guy that you still can't quite figure out. Conveniently, you picked the man who just got paid, Kyren Williams, fresh off that 3-year, $33 million contract, now making the 7th most annual dollars at the position. Thoughts on Kyren and what's made him such a difficult player to rank for you this offseason?
Well, I mean, he's a 5th-round draft pick that just had these 2 really big seasons. They've added 2 running backs in the last 2 years, but the Rams have also drafted running backs before that. So it's like every piece of data was like, okay, We know fantasy points are like actually the strongest indicator of future fantasy points. Kyren, check. He's done that both years, 21.4, 17.4 points per game. But then you would look over and say, okay, these other things I just said, they've drafted these other running backs. But then you're like, well, they've already drafted running backs before, and that didn't necessarily mean anything. But Kyren was actually one of those guys that got drafted as a 5th round pick, ended up turning into this player that we ultimately have all enjoyed very much in fantasy. So like my range on him, honestly, has been, Ian, that you could rank him as high as right next to Jonathan Taylor and as low as, down below Breece Hall and around Kenneth Walker. And that's not saying those players are bad, but it's like, it's a round difference, right? In ADP, almost a round and a half, depending on high or how low that you have Kyren Williams. So he's been a guy I've definitely gone back and forth on, but I do think this is huge for him. While like a new contract doesn't change your ability to play the game, it is still a young player that they have now committed to. And so I think that this is a really good sign for Kyren Williams. I don't think it precludes him from sharing a little bit more of the workload. But man, it's also easier for me to buy into him just getting everything he has been getting because now they've paid him the dollars to do it. So not that efficient last year, but really was the year before. 4.1 yards per carry last year, but the year before was a 5. Again, these contrasting numbers. Every time you think you find something on Kyren, you can pin down and be like, oh, I'm going to go lower. Or, oh, I'm going to go higher. Like it just all tends to balance out. But I've considered moving him up a little bit now that I know that he's got the money. What's really the difference between him and Chase Brown? I mean, Chase Brown, he's a guy that's not really been all that efficient, but we expect him to get all the workload. I think they're very similar players. So considering bumping up Kyren a couple of spots, maybe I just need to move him up a tier because I have him below Breece Hall. I think maybe now he just belongs in the bottom of that tier.
I am quite a bit higher on Kyren than you at this point in time. We'll get into that here as we get into the tiers in a little bit. But yeah, man, the dude has literally averaged more PPR points per game during these past 2 seasons than anyone other than Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and Jahmyr Gibbs. I've seen some cope out there in the Twitter streets, Dwayne, saying that this is Ramondre Stevenson sort of money and it shouldn't affect anything about how we view this backfield. I absolutely do think it does, man. Why would the Rams be making him the 7th highest paid running back in the league on a per year basis if they didn't want to keep feeding him the rock? So again, maybe it's not going to be close to 350 touches or anything, but man, still in your projections having steady for the 9th most combined carries and targets. Seems like he's once again going to be the lead guy in an offense that really does love to leave one running back on the field more than just about anyone. So Kyren Williams, again, not the most efficient last season. We can all admit that. Ball security, job security as well, of course, but man, certainly does now have that job security with all those millions of dollars. Good for Kyren getting paid. Good for running backs getting paid in general over these past 2 years. I want to talk about another guy that's certainly going earlier in drafts, but Dwayne, I just feel like maybe I haven't been taking him early enough, and that is Raiders rookie RB Ashton Jeanty, someone who after the draft I fired up as my RB3. Right now he's sitting there as my RB7. So it's really nothing to do with him as a great talent. I'm just wondering if his innate talent is that much better than guys like Christian McCaffrey, like De'Von Achane, like Derrick Henry. Maybe it is. The guy did just get the freaking 2nd most rushing yards next to, what's that guy's name? Barry freaking Sanders last season at Boise. He was a great pass catcher before that. There have been improvements in this Las Vegas Raiders offense. Geno, Chip Kelly, faster pace, yada, yada, yada. So again, it's one of these things where I think my tiebreaker has been, okay, I don't like the Raiders scoring offense as much as the 49ers or the Eagles or the Ravens. But if I want to critique myself, I'm not exactly holding out against Bijan Robinson, who's my RB1 in terms of just overall ranks there as well. So Ashton Jeanty, Dwayne, you've been a little higher on him than me. And again, haven't completely stayed away from drafting the guy, but we could easily look up in week 4 and just be like, oh yeah, duh. Why was he not RB2 or RB3?
Yeah, I mean, in the range of outcomes is to be the running back 1 overall. Like, that's how good he is. His closest comps in the rookie supermodel are Saquon Barkley, Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs. So, I mean, when you look at those guys and what they did as rookies, obviously Saquon was nuts. He scored 24 points per game that year. Leonard Fournette scored 17.7. McCaffrey was 14.4, had Jonathan Stewart still sitting there in front of him. The next year, McCaffrey went on for like 22 plus fantasy points per game. Bijan and the Arthur Smith experience, 14.8 points per game. So you could think, oh, what if they somehow put him in a rotation? The problem is I look at the rest of the depth chart and I'm like, look, I love Raheem Mostert as much as the next guy, probably more. That season 2 years ago when he scored all those touchdowns and was so good in Miami, like I thought it was great for Mr. Mostert. But I mean, we're saying this is a player that's 33, 34 actually, I think, heading into this year. And then we've got like Sincere McCormick. There's really just not much competition, right now. So I don't feel like he's going to run into the issue that Bijan did with playing time. Same thing for McCaffrey. And then the one other name, Jahmyr Gibbs, he didn't care about playing time. He still scored 16.3 fantasy points per game as a rookie, even though he was sharing with Mr. David Montgomery. So looking at that list, looking how strong of a prospect, I think I've kind of held my ground a little bit more than you have. But at the same time, there's a pretty good group of running backs that go at the end of round one. And I don't necessarily blame anybody if they did want to take Derrick Henry, if they did want to take Achane. McCaffrey used to be in that group. He's kind of starting to separate now and move more up the board, but you can throw him in that group as well. So I don't think it's an easy decision, to be honest. And this is coming from someone that absolutely loves Ashton Jeanty, and I typically do lean towards the younger player. I think there are arguments for all of those guys.
Again, not debating Jeanty's talent. It's just next to fellow very talented players. That's where it can get a little bit difficult. But I'll tell you the one thing that really is tough, Dwain, like the biggest kind of RB bust that we like to talk about being this early round pick is Trent Richardson. He finished as the RB5 as a rookie. He had 318 touches, caught 50 passes, wasn't particularly efficient, but fell in the end zone enough to still rack up those fantasy points anyway. So if we get good luck, just ish, I would say, let's say Jeanty plays 15 games. He's not like badly hobbled. I don't see how he finishes worse than RB12. I mean, seriously, man, like it would take a Bijan Robinson, Arthur Smith sort of situation. I'm with you. I just don't see that exactly coming to fruition. So Ashton Jeanty, man, if you are actually selecting, 111, 112, right around that turn, I think you could do a lot worse than, again, taking one of these other guys there. So Ashton Jeanty, someone who I am not going to be fully fading. Just wanted to, again, say how tough it's been for me not to honestly draft him higher throughout this offseason. So regardless, guys, time to get into our RB tiers. This has been our DraftKings opening lines. Baseball fans, summer is in full swing and the season is heating up. From mid-season rivalries to breakout performances, every game is packed with drama, and thus there is no better time to jump in than now with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, new customers bet $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Whether it's towering home runs or clutch strikeouts, you will not want to miss a moment. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours, and you can stay in on the action and use your $200 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same game. And hey, if you love the thrill of live betting, DraftKings has got you covered there as well. Bet live on in-progress games right as they happen, making watching the game that much more exciting. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on the phone with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports and have a shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. RB tiers. Gotta freaking love it, Dwain. You published an article for free, I will say, over at fantasylife.com that everyone can check out. Went into your methodology, what you are basically really leaning into, and also gave some nice write-ups on all the running backs involved. So kudos to you, my friend. We invite everyone to go check that out if you are still into reading things in the year 2025. But today, going to be talking about it. And first things first, it is tier 1 and 2, Dwain. So got 4 guys chilling in tier 1: Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, and Saquon Barkley. Tier 2 is a 3-man wolf pack: Ashton Jeanty, De'Von Achane, and Derrick Henry. So kicking things off with tier 1. Again, you're not going to see many complaints from me here. Bijan, Gibbs, CMC, and Barkley, 4 of the very best fantasy running backs that you could ask for. That said, Dwain, let's say a base half PPR league, what wide receivers would you actually be willing to take ahead of these guys?
I think it's Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, and a base half PPR, those are the 2 I would be willing to take. I don't think you have to take either one of them over these guys. Chase is probably the 101 in any format. The thing is, like, my wide receiver tiers also just hit, guys. You can check those out over at fantasylife.com for free, as Ian says, if you like to read. If you don't, I try to put a lot of nice, pretty tables in there that give you the main things I'm looking at. So if you're more of a skimmer, there's also something in there for you as well. But when you look at that tier of wide receivers, man, it's just a great time to be alive. We have some really good receivers and some really good running backs, but I think that it does end for me. I think I'm going Jamar Chase, then I think it's Bijan Robinson, then I think it's CeeDee Lamb, then I think it's Jahmyr Gibbs and a half point. But I think you could argue that in any order you wanted, and you could also argue, like, if you came to me and said, no, I want CMC over CeeDee Lamb. Like I would say, man, I would lean to the youth. Lamb's, proven, but I could also see someone going to CMC. Some people might also just be surprised, Ian, that we have or at least I have CMC above Barkley.
I was about to bring that up, Dwain. I think you were maybe sharing a few too many Mike's Hard Lemonades with our lovely coworker, Matthew Friedman. I know you guys were getting together recently. Look, man, I mean, just based on your projections, these are not even Friedman's. I took just yours. Projected carries and targets this year, okay? Bijan's at 334. That's the second most among any running back. Gibbs is at 249. CMC's at 257. Saquon's at 342, man. So we're saying he's going to have around 90 extra opportunities to touch the ball, most likely over Gibbs and CMC. Yet, still just your RB4.
Yeah. And so the projections you're looking at haven't updated. And so that's the thing, because right now we don't have our back end hooked up, guys, where I can just hit the projections update. So it has to roll through the updates. So CMC is a lot closer to Barkley now. And so ultimately what it came down to is if you look at the way that, these running backs end up really scoring a lot of fantasy points every year, surprise, it's what they do in the passing game. And if we look at Saquon Barkley last year, as much as we love him, so many of those carries came from 50-plus yards out for touchdowns. And if you look at the fact that Jalen Hurts gets half the carries inside the 5, Saquon, he ran pretty pure. And I'm not saying he can't run pure again when you play behind the Eagles line. And then, you get these leads and you're playing in the fourth quarter and defenses are like, screw this. I don't want to attack this. I don't want to tackle this 230-pound dude that, runs 23 miles per hour. I get it. I wouldn't want to tackle that person either. And so I'm not saying Barkley won't get the big runs, but CMC, man, just a guy, when we look at it, you're talking about 19, 20, 21% target shares. I mean, these are wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. Wide receiver 3 target shares that go along with the running back they could have 275, 280 carries. So it's just really, really hard. And when you look at the 49ers offense, we've got George Kittle, who's 32. And then outside of that, Ayuk, out maybe as much as half the season. We don't know what he's going to look like. Ricky Pearsall, we both like, but he did it in a really small sample at the end of last year. Juwan Jennings, I think we both give props to as well, but he's had 1 year and it was a year 6 breakout. So I could just see this offense totally rolling through CMC. And again, guys, it's a tier. So don't get mad. Be glad that you get to pick which one you want. If you want to take Bijan first, you can. If you want to take Saquon Barkley first, if you can. If you want to take CMC first, the big stand I wanted to make is I do believe that Gibbs and CMC belong in the same tier with Bijan Robinson and with Barkley. So.
Certainly agree there. Again, Jahmyr Gibbs, someone who, yes, flashed the overall RB1 upside down the stretch when David Montgomery was out. But even before that was the RB5 still in terms of PPR points per game. So ceiling is obviously the moon, but the floor might as well be, the upper story as well for Mr. Gibbs. And yeah, I'm not here to hate on CMC. He is, after all, the all-time RB1 in career PPR points per game. But man, Dwain, I was just looking at Saquon. I know you're not fading the guy. You said before he's a top 6 overall pick, but I just worry that maybe for the second year in a row, we're overthinking this. We have arguably the single best running back alive playing behind the single best offensive line in the NFL. It's the same thing with Derrick Henry. I feel like we should just be taking that, which I know you are, but I would stress that again. Beyond CD and Jamar Chase, man, don't be afraid to take Saquon Barkley purely because of these 400 touch studies or the reigning RB1 does X, Y, and Z the following season. That would be the stuff that I would just say, don't be fading the guy for. We're on the same page there, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't care about any of that stuff. It's all complete BS. But when you look at Barkley, again, he did run pure. If you don't get some of those long touchdowns, if you don't get to play the Rams twice, that's a problem for Saquon because he's not getting the carries inside the 5. Also, whenever we look at, the ability to have this explosive target share season, he gets a bit limited there as well. We know Saquon's actually a good receiver out of the backfield. The problem is you've got A.J. Brown, you've got Devonta Smith, you've got Dallas Goedert, and then you've got Jalen Hurts, who also likes to scramble. So a lot of the things that ultimately we were worried about with Saquon did happen last year. If you compare what he had done in the years before, as far as, what he looked like as a receiver and things like that, also as far as his carries inside the 5-yard line, he overcame them with the long touchdowns. And so I think it's fair to question it a little bit. To your point, he's in tier 1. If you want to take him with the first pick overall, I have no problem with someone taking Barkley. So this isn't me necessarily being down on him. I'm just following a process, of the data that I use that is shown to have the highest correlation to future fantasy success. And all 4 of these guys check the boxes we want.
What is the kind of just, I guess, idea behind saying like the long touchdowns are something that we shouldn't expect again? Because for my money, I mean, he earned those. They were huge holes by a great offensive line. He is the fastest guy on the football field half the time. Yeah, he scored a lot of them, but wouldn't we kind of expect that from a player of Saquon's just fortitude and just God-given ability?
Historically, you don't see the amount of yards on not what we call explosive plays. Those are the 10 plus yards, but on the breakaway plays, right? So those are 15 plus. It's all kind of the same thing. But once you get to a point where there's so much chunk of your yardage coming from those plays and it's down to like 7 or 8 of them, yeah, it's really hard to repeat that. It's just hard to break that many, 50 plus yard touchdown runs. Saquon last year, like I'm looking at my notes right now, how many of those did he have? It was crazy. It was crazy how many of those he had. Yeah, I think it was like 8. I mean, he had 13%. 13% of his series went for 10 plus yards. Like that won't surprise me. Like I think that will probably happen again. But he crossed the goal line, including the playoffs, 18 times. 56% of those came from 20 plus yards away. That was the number I found that was really hard to repeat going back and looking. So again, to your point, like Barkley's kind of a freak. But also when you go back and look at other names that litter this list, we've got guys like Adrian Peterson that weren't as lucky the next year. Still same Adrian Peterson, still the same explosive player, just not as many carries, went for 50 plus yard touchdowns.
What's crazy about those touchdowns, too, is they give me nightmares to one of Michigan's many victories over Ohio State recently, where Donovan Edwards just kept scoring at the end of the game. And it was like, yeah, they were 70-yard touchdowns. But my God, Dwayne, if we had an unlimited football field, I mean, these dudes still might be running out there, okay? Like Saquon was literally untouched, and no one's even within 10 yards of him by the time he crosses the goal line. So again, tier 1 at Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, CMC, and Saquon Barkley. I'm just a little bit different. I do have a Bijan, Saquon, Gibbs in my book. But again, 4 running backs where it is a little bit tough to go wrong. Let's move on to tier 2, Dwayne. Again, we have Ashton Jeanty, who we talked about a little bit in our DraftKings opening line. Shout out De'Von Achane and Derrick Henry coming in as your RB7. So I wanted to look at this and just say, again, if we're embracing that first or last mindset, we want to win our whole freaking fantasy league in round 1 here. What would you actually rank this as if you knew, if the fantasy football genie came to you and said, hey, Jeanty, Achane, and Henry are all going to reach their peak scenario this year, would your order be the same?
What we have to say is the reasonable peak, right? Which is what we built the floor and ceiling logic around at Fantasy Life. And yes, I would order them this way. Now, I will tell you that Achane came out at 22.9 as his ceiling, and Jeanty came out at 22.8, right? And it all comes down to I've got Achane projected for a little bit more work in the passing game than what I have for Jeanty. But the thing is, we know that Jeanty can do it. The other thing that we have with Jeanty is he is a bigger back. We know that he's going to get the carries inside the 5-yard line. So I think it's Jeanty right there with Achane. Derrick Henry is a little bit below them. I know this sounds weird to say, guys, but essentially Derrick Henry went nuclear. He had his best case scenario last year. Could he do it again this year? Yes. And that's why we have him ranked this high, because he's with Lamar Jackson. But the kryptonite scenario here is if we have a situation where the Ravens play in tougher games, they get behind in games, that leads to these passing script games. And in those last year, man, Derrick Henry, he still struggled. Now, they didn't have many of them because they're the freaking Ravens. But Derrick Henry just doesn't carry the passing game upside that we get from Achane and what we get from Jeanty. So that helps their floor, also helps their ceiling. Now, if you want to look at a guy like Henry in a standard form and a standard league where we're not counting anything for receptions, then I think you look at Derrick Henry being over both of those guys. But in half PPR and in PPR formats, I am taking Jeanty and Achane over Mr. Derrick Henry, and I do think that this reflects the appropriate ceiling as well as floor.
Pure volume, given the receiving, just capabilities, I do think Jeanty would be the one there. Again, just total raw touches. A lot of people forget how good he actually was as a receiver in 2023 with Boise State. In fact, he did put up yards per route run numbers on par with Jahmyr Gibbs and Christian McCaffrey. So we see that tapped into more. Not exactly a ton going on in that Raiders offense behind Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers in the first place. I can see a scenario there. Achane is basically, we get year 1 yards per carry efficiency. Oh, yeah, set the all-time single season NFL record in that, plus the receiving production that was ahead of any other RB last year. So I get it there. But maybe we got to dream bigger for Derrick Henry, Dwayne. Why can't this dude break LaDainian freaking Tomlinson's touchdown record here if he runs pure enough for the Ravens? All right, that's what I'm thinking. Put me in charge of the ceiling tool and give me 40 points per game for this, man. I kid. But it seriously has been a long time. This surprised me, man, all right? Because the all-time most touchdowns in a season, LaDainian Tomlinson had 31 in 2006, Sean Alexander, 28 in 2005, Priest Holmes, 27 in 2003, Marshall Faulk, 26 in 2000. Shout out Emmitt Smith with 25 in 1995. Almost 20 years, man. We are due for a 25-plus touchdown campaign. And I'll just say this. I'm sure this is not being offered on DraftKings. It'd be cool if it was. Take my money. 25-plus touchdowns, plus 500 odds for Derrick Henry. You wouldn't put $10 on that?
I think $10 is fine. The key is most of the names that you just gave were all dual threats. LaDainian Tomlinson caught the ball a ton. Priest Holmes caught the ball a ton. Who else did you name? Sean Alexander might have been the one I have to go back and look at and see how many actual touchdowns came from receiving. But you said one other name besides Emmitt Smith. Most of his came on the ground as well.
Faulk, Holmes, and LT.
Yeah. It was LaDainian Tomlinson, Faulk, and Priest Holmes were all major dual threat guys, right? So now looking at Henry last year, I mean, he was very similar, honestly, to what we have with Saquon Barkley. Like the dude didn't break as many long runs, but I mean, he had a 44-yarder, 43-yarder, 87-yarder, 14% of his carries for 10 plus yards, career high in yards before contact. That's that Lamar Jackson gravitational pull. Can you imagine being a linebacker, former linebacker in college, Ian, and you're getting ready, you're training all week for this, and you've got a guy like Lamar Jackson that can run as fast as he is, as crafty as he is, and he could hand that ball to Henry or he could pull it. And you're supposed to encourage the team to do one or the other. Like, how do you choose? How do you really choose which one you want? And the fact of the matter is, I mean, this runway that Henry's getting with Jackson, can you imagine trying to bring this man down whenever, more often than not, he's like getting up to a full head of steam more quickly than what he used to do when he was in Tennessee? That's just, I would not want to be, that's a long day for a linebacker, a safety, anyone having to deal with Derrick Henry downhill. I'm sorry, I feel for you.
Absolutely ridiculous. I will say, as much as he does get the long touchdown runs, we don't have the Jalen Hurts problem inside the 5-yard line. Last year, Dwayne, Lamar Jackson had as many carries as you and I did inside the 5-yard line. Okay, so once they do get near that goal line, it is the big dog Derrick Henry show. Accordingly, top 7 RB for Dwayne. I got him RB6, again, one spot ahead of Jeanty. Either way, when you're on that round 1, round 2 turn, guys, would not be afraid of drafting Henry and one of these other running backs or even a wide receiver to kick off your fantasy draft. So again, those were tiers 1 and 2. Now time to get into tiers 3 and 4. Time for the ADP audit presented by Premier National Sports. All right, Dwayne, looking at tier 3 RBs here, we actually have 6 guys making this up. Bucky Irving leading things off, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Mr. Ride or Die himself, Omarion Hampton, Chase Brown, and Breece Hall. We'll get into RB4, I should say tier 4 of the RBs here in just a minute. But looking at these tier 3 RBs, okay, I want you to pick one that you're most worried about busting and then one who you are consistently trying to come away in drafts and maybe even willing to reach a little bit for.
Yeah, so it's interesting because one of the guys that I am the most worried about busting, I'm still drafting plenty because I think he has the right archetype that we're looking for, which is we truly do, guys, want the guys that have shown like they can handle that 65% of the rush workload and still give you like that 13 to 16% target share. That's just the sweet spot for absolute fantasy greatness. And Breece Hall's in that range. He's shown us at multiple years. If you look at his fantasy points per game, 16.7, 17. Last year dipped down a little bit to 15.1. But I am concerned because I do have the offense projected as one of the 5 worst in the league as far as scoring goes. We do have Justin Fields who likes to scramble. I'm not super worried about that because after Garrett Wilson, I really don't know who else you're going to throw the ball to if you're Justin Fields besides probably Breece Hall. I feel like there's a chance.
Josh Reynolds, Alan Lazard. Oh my God.
I know, right? There's a sneaky chance that like really it's just Breece Hall, and we have heard the coaches talking up how much they want to use him out of the backfield as a receiver, not lining up in the slot, guys. Not talking about that kind of conversation here, but it is something that we've seen him do, right? He's done both of these things for multiple years. He's also got that explosive playmaking ability, which is kind of that tiebreaker. A lot of people, it's kind of interesting because a lot of folks, I think, they look at Breece Hall, and just some interactions I had like over on X was just like, yeah, man, he just looks really washed. But then like you go back and you really look at it, you watch it a little bit. I mean, 13% of his carries went for 10 plus yards. So the NFL average is 9%. So he was still one of the more explosive backs in the league. And there's also this chance, like if they could run the right scheme with Justin Fields, it won't be Lamar Jackson because he's not the same threat as a passer. But you could create a run scheme, right, wwhere you've got this, situation where it's just tough between dealing with Fields and what you have with Breece Hall.
The O-line looks good too, Dwayne. Like they've invested enough in these last two drafts. I mean, Brandon Thorne, PFF alike, they are actually high in this Jets offensive line for maybe the first time ever.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you look at, they're very heavily invested in their offensive line. If you go back to 2021, they've got 3 first rounders, and then they took another first rounder and Armand Mimoa this year. And again, we talk about the scheme with Justin Fields. We do have a new head coach. We've got a new offensive coordinator coming over from the Lions with Ingstrand. So like I think there's a lot of positives here. From where the Jets were a year ago. The one thing, that worries me is if Justin Fields does poach some of these touchdowns, if their offense can't get things into a place to where we think it's better than where I have them projected. And then you do have that sliver of a chance that a guy like Braylon Allen does steal away some of the rushing touchdowns. He is a big guy. I personally was not that worried about it, but I can't completely ignore the camp news. The problem with the camp news is when I see the clips that people are using to try to freak out about, it's Braylon Allen running against like no one. Like there's not even a defensive line lined up. And it's like, oh man, look at this. And I was like, yeah, what are you looking at? Like, I hope the guy can run around the corner against no one for 40 yards. But at the same time, they have talked about him. Like the coaching staff is also talking about Braylon Allen. So it's just enough to where, man, Breece Hall, as good as he is, and I think, his skill set's certainly better than where he's going in fantasy drafts. If like a couple of those things worked against him, it would be really bad. It would be really bad for Breece Hall. So I'm still drafting him, but I'm at least getting my spider senses are at least starting to tingle a little bit that maybe I should care a little bit more about the other backs in the backfield and the potential for them to hurt his value. I just think he's so much better than Braylon Allen. I struggle with that. So I can go back and forth.
Our second biggest difference in the top 20 actually is Breece Hall, Dwayne's RB13, my RB17. So again, not the biggest, widest difference in the world, if you will, but still a situation where I am actually leaning into a bit more of those factors that Dwayne is not too fond of either. So that said, Dwayne, I did want to get away with your, who you actually are targeting. I think we're on the same page here. I'm in, Matthew Berry's in, Mr. Ride or Die. It's Omarion Hampton, right?
Yeah, Omarion Hampton is, look, he's an amazing prospect. He checks all the boxes. It's not like he's this elite receiver out of the backfield, but he's good enough to be a 10 to 12% target share guy. Like, I think, honestly, if you're thinking of closest comp, like that people are really used to, it is Jonathan Taylor, but younger, right? And still really, not saying Jonathan Taylor isn't in his prime, but like this guy's coming into his first year. So I think he has the opportunity here to be the lead back inside the 5-yard line right away. He's got the frame and the body type to handle that 350 touch workload. So yeah, Omarion Hampton is the guy, but I'll let you go on about Hampton. I think the other guy, like, and I won't go to him right now, but that I've drafted even more than Omarion Hampton is honestly Bucky Irving. And I love Omarion Hampton. But Bucky Irving was so good to close out last season and how much they really turned to him. We can talk about him in a minute, but what are your thoughts on Hampton?
It's just a situation where we got one-eyed Najee. Who knows if he's even going to be out there right now? Not the greatest thing, Dwayne, to just hear he's taking laps around the practice field. That's a totally normal thing for a running back to do while you're recovering from an eye surgery, I guess. Nothing to see here, everyone. Everything's going fine with Najee. So, again, maybe he is ready to go. But even then, man, we just have an offensive line that has made the sort of improvements to now be a consensus top 10 unit. We're not worried about the scoring upside of the group. And honestly, a little bit similar to the Breece Hall situation with the Jets. I'm not saying Hampton is necessarily that polished as a receiver, but would it shock us if he ends up being the second or third overall target earner? It's at least a little bit flat behind Ladd McConkey. It could happen. So again, Hampton, yes, I am also trying to fulfill Boss Man's wishes. Mr. Matthew Berry supporting the cause, of course. But yeah, man, I just think that, again, it's one of these situations where I don't want to overthink this sort of talent in the first round in an offense I like. I really don't have any holes to poke in other than that. Yeah, it'd be more ideal to get an extra handful of touches. With Bucky Irving, it is is one of those things, Dwayne, where he is my RB11, you're RB8, so you are a few upticks higher on him than me. Look, I'm not saying that he wasn't fantastic last year. He absolutely was, but I'm just a little bit wondering, man, if we don't get the week 17, week 18 wild card roll, and it actually looks a little bit more just like the second half of the season, okay? I understand he was a rookie and he was working his way in the first 8 or 9 weeks of the year, but that said, man, this was an offense. And yeah, Liam Cohen's gone, which I guess we can try to warp into a good thing if we really want to, but I don't love that Rachaad White literally outscored this dude through the first, 4 months of the season. So again, with Bucky, he's fantastic, but there's a reason why he didn't finish as a top 15 running back last year, why he didn't have a top 15 utilization score. I'm not convinced that reason's gone.
I think it is. I mean, Rachaad White, let's just be honest, like he's not very good. And if we're going to let that stand in the way of what we saw Bucky Irving do to close out the season, where he had 62% of the snaps, 60% of the attempts, 100% of the carries inside the 5-yard line. Yes, he still shared some of the passing down work with Rachaad White. And that is the one avenue where White could still remain involved. But we're talking about a guy, Rachaad White, that the coaches have been talking bad about for 2 years. And they took his role away from him, and they really did it sooner, but then Bucky Irving got hurt. And so they kind of had to back off of it. And then they gave the role back to Bucky Irving. So, I mean, look, in week 18, like we talked about in the wild card game, whenever they really needed someone, they completely turned to him. They've all the coach speak has been positive about him this offseason. I mean, just as recently, I can't remember when I saw the other one as yesterday, as them just seeing him as being such a special talent. They just need to feed this man. It's starting to sound like the Kenneth Walker thing at the end of last preseason. And so when I look at Bucky Irving, the distance between him and Rachaad White as far as talents, it's astronomical. It's not anywhere close. Like Bucky Irving is just such a better player. I'm just not going to let Rachaad White be the reason that I look back and cry, out my fantasy football tears that I didn't take him because I was worried about some dude that just really has never done anything except work on some passing down. So I look at it. I mean, look, 10 plus yard attempts, 13%. That's a running back one. 5 yards per attempt, 5.4. We can go.
No, they're all elite. They're all elite.
That's a running back one. Yards after contact, running back one. Missed tackles forced per attempt, running back one. Like it's all amazing.
And why did it take 4 months to get the job?
Dude, this happens all the time. Go back and look at rookies.
Yeah, so why couldn't it happen again this year? Rachaad White was the RB10 2 years ago. We don't see it go backwards. We don't see it go backwards like that, Ian. Go back and look at these guys. It doesn't suddenly turn around. I'm not saying it never happens, but once the guys take over the workload and they look so good and they've gone away from the guy that sucks, it's very rare for him to turn back around and then go the other way. Like, think about it. Think about Kyren Williams taking over his backfield for the Rams and how that worked out. Think about a lot of these guys where this has happened. So for me, I think it's fine if you want to worry about it, but we have a player that's on one of the top 8 offenses in the league. It could even be better than that. And he's probably he's going to be the lead back. And the other thing is, he's good as a receiver. Just like people shouldn't assume that, De'Von Achane is not going to get the carries inside the 5, James Cook. And then those guys get that last year. I think it's pretty dangerous, honestly, to assume that we're not going to see Bucky Irving get 55, 60%. I think Rachaad White's absolute dust as far as getting the carries. I think that's over. Ball game. It's already over. The question is, do they give more passing down work to Bucky Irving? And my bet is, and I don't even have it projected this way yet, my bet is they do. I bet that goes up 5 or 10% just because he's so much more valuable to have on the field than Rachaad White. 150 targets for Mike Evans. We'll give 120 to Godwin, another 115 to training camp Hall of Famer Emeka Egbuka. Yeah, why can't there be more for Bucky as well?
He had 13%, I just think that, again, 12% last year, not even playing passing downs.
Yeah.
I mean,
Chris Godwin was gone for the entire last 3 months of the year. Jalen McMillan wasn't doing much. Just saying. The end of season usage, I feel like they did it because it was must-win games, which, yeah, you should absolutely do it then. I just don't know that in September they're going to be like, yeah, Bucky, here's 30 opportunities. We'll see. We're barking about, again, RB8 versus RB11, so I'm not going to turn
He's the closest thing you can get to Jahmyr Gibbs and a De'Von Achane at the end of round 2. He is. He is that type of explosive player. Don't be a coward like Ian, guys. Take Bucky Irving at the end of round 2.
Looking at tier 4, Dwayne, we have a handful of running backs: Kenneth Walker, Kyren Williams, James Cook, Alvin Kamara, Chuba Hubbard, and James Conner. So again, knowing that, yes, we are talking tier 4 RBs, but this is also a situation in drafts looking at round 3, round 4, where we have Jalen Hurts, we have George Kittle, and we still have some pretty darn good wide receivers in their own right. Is there anyone in this tier who you are actively going out of your way for, knowing what also is hanging out at those other positions?
So the problem is really, I mean, so it's kind of a split tier. Some of these guys, to your point, are really challenged. They're going up against the elite quarterbacks for where you have to take them. Kyren Williams, like, do you want Kyren Williams or do you want Jaden Daniels or Lamar Jackson? Like, that's a real decision. But once you look at guys like Kenneth Walker, who I actually have at the top of this tier, he's going after the elite quarterbacks are pretty much off the board. So he is the guy, obviously, I have at the very top. I was honestly torn, Ian, with Kenneth Walker being in this tier and tier 3 just above. And I let ADP kind of be the split for me. But Kenneth Walker is a guy that has shown that he can handle the workload on the ground, 66% of the rushing attempts last year, and a 14% target share. So it's also proven that he can do it through the air. Explosive rush rate was down a little bit last year, but if you go back and look at the two seasons before, that number was really good as well. He's got the right body type for it, 16.5 fantasy points per game. So the guy that I really am trying to come away with out of this group that I'm the most excited when I draft them is Kenneth Walker. Like, he's the guy I get the most hyped about. I think you can make the argument for Kyren Williams as well. I mean, we've already talked about him, but he has been a very good producer. He's still in his prime at 25.1 years old. But Kenneth Walker is the name for me that I get the most excited about. A lot of the other names that run it, Kyren, the tricky part of it has been having to take him versus George Kittle or one of the elite quarterbacks.
I'm with you. Kenneth Walker has been the guy who I have gone on my way for at certain points of the offseason. Not the whole time. Luckily, he is back at practice. I don't love the fact that there's a nagging foot injury after the ankle injury earlier in the offseason. Again, it's early August. I get that. But again, just given Kenneth Walker's history, this is like the last guy that we want to be hearing about. Exactly. So again, please, injury gods, just give us one full year of Kenneth Walker. Really do think it could be fireworks. So again, we'll see what happens with James Cook. Obviously, he's RB16 for Dwain, RB15 for myself. Could potentially move up higher if we do get the contract figured out. Diana Rossini actually was talking about his difference with the Bills not being as wide as guys like Terry McLaurin, other holdings going on around the league. We'll say Chuba Hubbard's someone that in half PPR and especially standard, let's not exactly, put this dude in the back because, hey, we are now working behind the league's single most expensive offensive line. Chuba, very good and got paid in his own right. Alvin Kamara, though, Dwain, again, not sure where he's landing with your current projections, but must be pretty freaking high. It is a situation where, let's face it, the Saints offense hasn't been great the last 2 years. They're not going to be good this year either, but man, back-to-back top 5 finishes and this dude's ranked RB17. We could once again be sitting here in week 2 going, Doy, why didn't we just draft more Alvin Kamara?
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I made it into this tier. I mean, if you look at him, guys, and you're looking at the screen, 19 fantasy points per game, but 63% route participation. That number's in dark blue because that's really good. 22% target share. I mean, absolutely insane. Kamara's not as explosive as he used to be, but still 11% of his carries went for 10 plus yards. Again, the league average is 9.5%. So he's still outdoing most of his peers, even though he is getting older. The only thing keeping him from going higher is his offense. Like, if Alvin Kamara was playing on an offense we really liked, even though we're talking about a guy going into his age 30 season, I think you could argue that he would be going as high as mid round 2. I mean, like, he and CMC are very similar. CMC just happens to be on a team where we know we like the offense. Now, the 49ers have questions as well, but we know they have Brock Purdy. Right? They don't have the same kind of questions that we have with the Saints. And it's not so great that we're hearing Spencer Rattler, who was pretty terrible last year, is already beating out Tyler Shuck, who is the guy they hoped when they took it the beginning of round 2 could be the guy to come in and take over for Derek Carr. So I don't like what I'm hearing about the offense, and that's ultimately what holds him down. But my respect for him as what he can do as a player is what ultimately pushes him up into this tier. But I think you said it perfectly. I think it could be a thing where week 3 or 4 that we're like, dang, man, like, this dude's just still scoring 18 fantasy points a game. Doesn't really matter what's going on. And that pass catching ability really does kind of insulate him from a lot of that. The challenge is, what is it going to look like come week 12? When he's got a small little issue going on with an ankle or whatever, and the team's won one game. Sorry, Cooter Doodle and her family are all in the Superdome, and they've all got sacks over their heads. Nobody really knows it's the Cooter Doodle family because they're all wearing sacks with little holes cut out in front of their eyes. Like, that's the way the season could go for the Saints. And so I think that's the challenge you're going to have. I think, to Ian's point, you're going to get the early season production. I think you're going to get it from Alvin Kamara. I think the challenge will be, when do you move off? When do you go ahead and make the trade? Or when do you somehow refortify your lineup in a way that once that potential downturn happens, you have someone else that you can get into your lineup for Kamara?
I will say, Dwayne, no way of predicting this, but we did see it happen with two wide receivers last year, Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper. Maybe Kamara's hamstring starts hurting in week 6. Maybe it's not a real hamstring injury. Maybe he's tired in New Orleans. Maybe Sean Payton wants a running back he can trust. Could you imagine Alvin Kamara, Broncos RB1? We'd be losing our freaking minds.
Yeah, I wouldn't be, because I have a lot of RJ Harvey. I would be losing my mind in a bad way. But yeah, honestly, like, he's so good, he could fit in a lot of different places, right? He has, like, if the Cowboys went for this guy, like, immediately, like, he's the every down starter for them right away, right out of the gate on an offense that we really like. Like, that's a great test. Where would you rank Alvin Kamara today if he played for the Cowboys, Ian?
RB ahead of Bucky Irving. Sorry, Dwayne, but like, he would legit be a top 10 RB.
Yeah, I can't really argue that. The only thing we have against him is age, which his pass receiving ability helps him offset, and B, he might be on the worst offense in the entire league. Like, if we had to pick right now, like, I think the Saints are the favorite to be the worst offense in the league. So if you suddenly took, the offensive issue away, yes, I agree. Like, we'd be talking about Alvin Kamara as a round 2 fantasy pick. I would be. I know there'd still be some people saying, age 30, I'm not going to do it. Well, you're drafting Derrick Henry. He's in that range. So we're saying we're putting him on a good offense. I think Kamara would be a round 2 pick.
No reason to expect him to get traded, but you guys can imagine what it would be like if he did. Again, guys, this has been our ADP audit presented by Premier National Sports. Shout out to our friends over at Premier National Sports. Guys, again, it is a wild landscape in college football right now. NIL regulations changing left and right. And accordingly, high school athletes looking to take their game to the next level and hopefully get paid along the way need to know the rights from the wrong. And that's what the fine folks at Premier National Sports are here to help them with. So again, if you yourself are a high school athlete, if you have a friend, family member, any of that, make sure you advise them to go check out our friends over at Premier National Sports. Again, a trusted recruiting and NIL resource for high school athletes and their families. Help rising high school athletes take their game to the next level with personalized recruiting strategies and NIL education. Check them out if you haven't yet. You can get in touch with their team at premiernationalsports.com. All right, Dwayne, breaking down the tier 5, 6, and 7 RBs. So again, we've had some decent sized tiers. Not the case though at tier 5. A pair of explosive pass catching rookies in Travion Henderson and RJ Harvey as your RBs 20 and 21. Tier 6, a little bit longer. Okay, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, Caleb Johnson, Aaron Jones, Isaiah Pacheco, Tony Pollard, Brian Robson, and Joe Mixon. So we'll get to tier 7 in a second. But out of these tier 5 and 6 RBs, Dwayne, who are you actually afraid of because you have not drafted enough of them so far in this offseason?
Well, I've drafted a lot of Travion Henderson and RJ Harvey, but I'm still afraid it's not enough. And that's why I tiered them this way. I want to come away with one of them if I can in every single draft. Obviously, it doesn't work that way. And now that, Travion, obviously with the way his camp is going, like, people are just getting more and more hyped on him because they're seeing what he can do as a receiver. It feels like every day, we're seeing him catch some pass downfield. He caught another one in their red zone drill. I think it was yesterday where he caught a touchdown. And I think when you look at the Patriots, like, what do they need? They need explosive playmakers that can give them chunk plays. Okay. We hope Kyle Williams can do that. We hope Stephon Diggs, older player coming off of, the ACL midseason last year, can do that. But he's probably more of a chain mover. Like, Henderson's the guy that you can just get these easy design touches to and let him just do some of that easy work for Drake May. And kind of pad those yards per attempt stats, just get the ball out to Travion Henderson in space, and he can probably make you look really good. So I think he's going to share, obviously, with Ramondre Stevenson. But I did bump more of the projection over to Henderson just because the vibes are so positive every single day through camp. And it does match up with what we saw in the rookie supermodel. So it's just, I feel like Henderson has everything working for him. If you look at RJ Harvey, Ian, it's a little bit different. A very similar skill set, explosive playmaker. He can catch balls out of the backfield. I think Travion is actually a little bit better receiver at this point in his career than what Harvey is, but it's with Sean Payton, who schemes up so much of this stuff through the screen game, behind the line of scrimmage. So I think RJ Harvey is going to be pretty safe to handle that sort of stuff. But they did add J.K. Dobbins. We've heard that, as recently as yesterday, that maybe J.K. Dobbins is really the starter here until RJ Harvey can get better and pass down work. Here's the thing I'm going to say about that, guys. By passing down work, there's two things. And really what you want to know is he losing the 2-minute offense. If he's losing the 2-minute offense, which he very well might not be, that's just, hey, we know we got to throw the ball. We're trying to go down and get a field goal at the end of the half, score points, or it's at the end of the game, and defenses are basically saying, throw it to your running back. We don't care. We're going to back our guys off. So far, it's going to be like Tucker Kraft every play, catching a 3-yard play, and you're hoping that he can run 8 or 9 yards. No, that wasn't an intentional stray. Tucker Kraft actually did beat the odds on multiple of those plays last year. But if you look at R.J. Harvey, like, he's the guy that would be better fit to do that than J.K. Dobbins. The long down and distance stuff, that's fine. It's not really worth very much from a fantasy perspective. All you're doing is staying in the blitz because it's 3rd and 9. You're getting man coverage, and they're going to send one more guy than what you have up front to protect with. And they're going to basically say, we're going to make the quarterback get the ball out of their hands before a receiver can get far enough downfield to make this completion. We don't care if J.K. Dobbins is on the field for those. He's just there to pick up the blitz. So that's really the thing to be watching for in the preseason. But man, I tiered these guys this way in between the two groups, and it's only these two in the tier because I really am trying to come away with one of them every single draft if I can. And I just think the upside by the time we get to trying to chase down our fantasy championships, they check all the boxes that we want.
I'm with you. I did have Trayvon Henderson as the guy I am most afraid of not having drafted more. I love the pass catching and explosive running back archetype. That's what we love to target in fantasy football land. It's just everything else. It's an offensive line that, can't be any worse, but we're also now relying on several rookies. Is Drake May hopefully taking a step forward? Is Josh McDaniels hopefully still being a good OC after everything that went down at the end of that Raiders debacle? So again, I think it's just that offensive environment that scares me just enough with Henderson to honestly, Dwayne, go ahead and rank R.J. Harvey one spot ahead of him. I just think, again, that Broncos O-line, Sean Payton, Bo Nix. Yes, we could argue that J.K. Dobbins is a bigger threat than Ramondre Stevenson, but honestly, I'm not even sure if that's something we need to overly worry about. So, end of the day, Henderson, Harvey, over these other guys that are, again, in tier 6, I do think you were spot on for prioritizing them.
No, I think they're the same, like as far as like Dobbins versus Stevenson. Like I'm with you. I don't think it's something we should overthink. What I meant earlier is really, like, R.J. Harvey had been so high because he landed somewhere with no competition, right? And Travion was down here, and now they've kind of done this in ADP. And I think, to your point, people might be overreacting at this point. They still belong in a very tight tier together, and they both offer the things you want.
We'll also say Caleb Johnson, someone who I'm sticking with having behind Jalen Warren. I do realize that, this dude was a beast at Iowa, breaking off all sorts of big runs. Maybe Arthur Smith gets back to treating him like Derrick Henry, at least in terms of those touches, not saying Caleb is that sort of player. And then again, that would make me look awfully stupid for some of the things I've said about Jalen hopefully being the RB1 this offseason. But dang it, Dwayne, if you don't stand for anything, you stand for nothing at all, or however that phrase goes. So we'll see what happens. Shout out Jalen Warren. Please be the RB1 this year. The Hartitz family household and bank account would appreciate that. Tier 7, Dwayne, this is a long one, headlined by Jalen Warren. Appreciate you doing that. Got Tyron Tracy. We got kind of flex with benefits types, okay? Jordan Mason, Ramondre Stevenson, Quinshon Judkins, free agent Quinshon Judkins, I should say. Travis Etienne, Zach Charbonnet, Tajay Spears, Cam Scatterbo, Dylan Sampson, Javonte Williams, Tank Bigsby, J.K. Dobbins, and Ray Davis. So again, talked about plenty of these guys. We'll see how the Jags sort of, pecking order shakes out. Seems like a different drumbeat going by the day here. But Dwayne, in this tier 7, who is your favorite back to target, and why is it Dylan Sampson?
Yeah, and if I was writing this week, I think we have heard enough of a drum beat, around Jaden Blue over the last week that you could argue maybe he belongs in this tier 2, just because we don't really have anyone in Jacksonville that we're that worried about. So I would say if I were sitting here writing this today and it wasn't already done, Blue would probably be in this tier as well. But yeah, Sampson, man, it's back to what you said. Quinshon Judkins is a free agent right now. They don't seem super committed on having a timeline for getting him in. He could end up on the NFI list. There's a lot of different ways that not NFI list. What's the one I'm thinking of? The commissioner's exempt. Yeah, exempt list. Yeah. There's just a lot of ways. Like I don't think Quinshon Judkins is out of the woods of just missing the whole season. If he does come back and they get him signed, like, it's going to be tough for him to have any negotiation leverage. Obviously, these guys, they're not slotted per se, but obviously the agent's trying to get them the same kind of money as the guys that are in a similar range as them in the draft. But he's lost all of his leverage. So, he may not even be necessarily in a hurry to try to get this deal done because he's kind of at his lowest point of leverage. I could see them just waiting to see if something happens with the Browns backfield and they get an injury, and then maybe the Browns get in more of a hurry. But then he comes back and he's got to be suspended, man. There's just a lot of ways where this goes right for Dylan Sampson. And if you look at Sampson, had to share the backfield in Tennessee, with another good player in Jalen Wright. But if you just look at what he did on his opportunities, he's an electric playmaker. He has a natural feel. He's very similar to Bucky Irving. I know we get into these, who's this year's Bucky Irving? Oh, it's going to be Dylan Sampson. Go watch. If you watch him play, they actually play very similarly. They don't time at super high end top speeds. I believe Sampson actually, though, at his pro day ran in the 4.4s, which is faster than what we had from Bucky Irving. But stylistically, both of them are not really big backs, but man, they just have such a natural feel for, setting up the next level defender, putting the foot in the ground and getting, downhill, even though they're smaller players. A lot of different things that I think you can like with Sampson. And there's just this pathway, man, Ian, that he could be the running back one for the Browns in week 1. And I get it. We don't love the Browns offense, but Joe Flacco can be serviceable. They've got a serviceable offensive line. Kevin Stefanski is an above average play caller, in my opinion. So as much as we may not like the offense, for as late as you're getting Dylan Sampson, man, like he could really surprise. Like he could end up performing more like a running back 2, and you're drafting him like a running back 5 or 6. I mean, I've gone out of my way to make sure you guys know how I feel about Dylan Sampson. I think I have him ranked 120. His ADP is 140. Like, so I just consistently have just kept my ranking like 20 spots ahead of ADP on Dylan Sampson, because he's one of the very few guys like in this range where we could say, man, week 1 could be the starter. And if all that explosive playmaking ability shows up, he suddenly gets 60% of the carries. Like he's going to be a running back 2 in fantasy, and he's going to give you running back 1 weeks.
Was someone who I know a lot of draft pundits before the draft happened did consider a day 2 talent. So again, if we were already projecting Quinshon Judkins as this low end borderline RB2, who said Dylan Sampson couldn't make that happen with a similar workload. So Jerome Ford not completely out of the picture by any stretch, but Dylan Sampson certainly someone at cost we should be getting excited about. Did want to give some love to Jordan Mason, guys. You look at some of the ADP with this dude on sharper sites versus your more traditional home leagues, which I'm sure will catch up. The ESPN Yahoos of the world really do think Mason is someone where when you can get him next to these more pure handcuffs, the Tyler Algiers, Trey Bences of the world, man, Mason has a chance to provide legit standalone value. Obviously, high-scoring Vikings offense, spruced up that offensive line too, especially the interior. So Jordan Mason, someone who I've really started to come away with him more at drafts than not. So still a few sleepers we wanted to shout out though, guys. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at Mike's Hard Lemonade. Wait, how many fantasy leagues are you in this year? 5, 6, 75 more? Look, if you're deep in the fantasy trenches like us, you already know how to win it all. You've got to go hard. And guys, Fantasy HQ, powered by Mike's Hard Lemonade, is the ultimate tool for fantasy sickos. From managing all your fantasy leagues in one place, man, that is convenient, to receiving personalized expert advice. I love that. Dominate your fantasy season by using Fantasy HQ and by enjoying a Mike's Hard Lemonade while sweating, maybe crying, hopefully sweating your matchups on Sundays. Check out Fantasy HQ at fantasylife.com and find Mike's nearest you at mikeshard.com. Nobody makes lemonade like Mike's. That said, Mike's is hard. So is prison. Don't drive drunk. Premium malt beverage liquor with flavors, all registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company in Chicago, Illinois. Again, Dwayne, we invite everyone to check out your full article over at fantasylife.com. For those on YouTube and on TV, you can also see the complete tiers here. So I'm not going to list out every single running back in tier 8 and 9, but just real quick, Dwayne, before we get out of here,
list one player by their face,
having too high and too low. Good luck, man. Too high, too low. Go get them, Dwayne.
You see Will Shipley up there at the end of tier 8. Yeah. So honestly, when you get to this range, it's kind of like the too high thing is probably not a real thing. Cause like we've got them ranked already really low, but if I had to say one, Nick Chubb, like but the problem is I just want to root for Nick Chubb. Can I just live in peace in the year 2025 and root for a guy that I've liked for the last, 7-8 years of playing fantasy football and honestly just watching football? I mean, Nick Chubb has been an absolute joy to watch. A guy that can break the long run, a guy that can run over you, a guy that can make that one step to sidestep you. Basically, it's been, you go back, guys, like 3 or 4 years ago, and you looked at all these yards after contact and all these, different data points. It was him and Derrick Henry. Like this guy was right there with Derrick Henry, and then the injuries came for him. And so I just want to see Nick Chubb back. We've got Joe Mixon dealing with an injury. We don't know when he's going to be back. We really don't have a timetable. All we've heard is that we don't have a timetable and it's not really looking good. So that's not ideal. And Joe Mixon's a guy that's up there in age. It's not like he's been, really all that great with his touches over the last few years either. So the door's open. So I will say Nick Chubb, though, is the one that when I go to click on him, it's like I'm clicking on him because it's like the nostalgia aspect. Am I really that excited to click on Nick Chubb? And who knows? I hope Nick Chubb proves all that wrong. I would be very happy about it. But I would say the guy that I worry that I have too low, I would just go back to what I mentioned earlier, and it's Blue. It's Jaden Blue with really how the news has unfolded over the last week. And how he's getting more reps. We already saw that he was getting some of the passing down work. My guess is he takes the 2-minute offense over immediately. It's really not like Javonte Williams or we have to have Miles Sanders out there in those scenarios. You can let one of those guys handle the long down and distance stuff. But now we're getting the reports of him getting first team reps, in early down situations. And man, if he starts getting that, I get it. He's small. But guys, people thought Achane was small. People thought Jahmyr Gibbs was small. I know he never really carried a huge workload in college, but we've got other backs that are like that. And if there's ever been a scenario where a player like that could just hit all the factors perfectly right and they run perfectly pure, it's Jaden Blue, because the rest of these other running backs, dude, they're just not good. They're not good. And so the door's wide open for Blue. And here's my thought on him. Even if you miss on him, man, especially in redraft, so I've already moved him up the ranks since I wrote this. It's fine. He's still the kind of swing, in my opinion, you want to take. And I think you could argue that I should have him ranked right next to Dylan Sampson. I think they're the same kind of thing. They both have a shot at being the starter week 1. You could maybe even argue that Dylan Sampson was the better prospect. That's why I've kept him ahead of Jaden Blue. He was a better prospect. But with Jaden Blue, I think you, like Ian, if you were countering, you could be like, yeah, but if Jaden Blue gets the starting role, he doesn't have to worry about a Quinshon Judkins coming back. And he plays on an offense that we actually like, that wants to throw the ball all the time, which probably fits his skill set best. So I'm not guaranteeing that Blue's going to hit, but man, I do think he's the kind of player that you want to be drafting and you want to be willing to be aggressive with. And it doesn't matter if you reach, especially if you look at your running back room and you're like, man, I feel great about my receivers. I've got one anchor running back, but man, I need some more upside late in my draft. I do think Jaden Blue is a name that if you're reading this screen here, he's too low.
And honestly, man, I know it's year 1 versus year 2, what we saw with Chase Brown, but we talked about the Cowboys maybe being that NFC version of the Bengals. Obviously, man, that would really start to come to fruition. God forbid something goes really wrong with the Micah Parsons situation. Jaden Blue, again, similar to Chase Brown. Well, I don't know if they're the best player in the world or anything like that. I can tell you they're not. But again, they got that big-time home run speed. They can catch the football. That can oftentimes be half the battle if you end up getting that full-time role in the NFL. I will just say that I am honestly a little bit afraid of how high I have Austin Eckler and Jalen Wright ranked. Dwain, I'm at RB 39 and RB 40 with these dudes, drafting them all over the place. If that goes wrong, again, not going to be a pretty situation when I'm checking out the old bank account. Potentially too low on the Rams handcuffs. I'm not sure if it's going to be Blake Corum or Jarquez Hunter. Again, I really do think it's Kyren's backfield, but God forbid something happens to Kyren, man. We've seen Sean McVay really lean on one running back more than any other coach out there. Either of these guys, I mean, that's going to be a heck of a conversation to have on our Waiver Wire Monday pod. Also, I hate to say it, man, Rachaad White, even as a pure handcuff, the dude's only one season removed from an RB10 finish where he averaged nearly 16 PPR points per game. I like Sean Tucker as much as the next, NFL nerd and everything like that, but I do wonder if we're just digging up that grave a little too soon for Mr. Rachaad White, but I do think that is firmly enough Buccaneers backfield talk for all you guys today. So again, I want to appreciate you joining us on the Fantasy Live Show, Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern, Fridays at noon. Always a great day to be great over here. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.